All right, good morning. It is October 29th, and we are getting very close to the end of the season, and it is rapidly declining as far as the climate. Whereas last week or the week before, we were complaining about the fact it was still too warm. This week it's gotten miserable. And so rain falls all around the state, and next week we're getting into frosts with lows in the Columbus area forecast to be somewhere around the 34, 33 area. And that'll knock a lot of things back. A couple of things I noticed on the disease front this week. Red thread is definitely returned to levels of activity we would have seen earlier in the year, with a lot of red hyphae running around. And the other one that I noticed this week was some white tea patch up in northern Ohio, which kind of has been hanging around for a little bit longer than what we might have expected this year. Both of those not going to do large amounts of damage. But going forward, something to be monitored. Online today, we got Dr. Dave Gardner and Dr. Dave Shetler. Dr. Dave Gardner, lead us off with an update on the weed front.
Right. So it's not technically too late to control weeds if you still have some that you want to take care of, although given the weather forecast for next week, if we have 3 days with highs in the 40s, that's definitely going to start to slow things down. But the week after that, we're supposed to rebound and recover back into the 50s, maybe even a day around 60. In those conditions, if you see things like this in your managed turf areas, these are all of the germinating winter annual weeds that next spring will get bigger and they will bloom and they will look more like this, right? So things like purple dead nettle, common chickweed, henbit, and hairy bittercress. Right now, when you look at the ground, you see things that look more like this, right? So tiny little seedlings, particularly in bare areas. So if you see that and you had a big problem with winter annual broadleaf weeds last spring, and the herbicides that you use weren't working so well for you on those mature, hardened off due to cold temperatures, flowering weeds, then try to hit them this fall, okay? The thing is make sure you're using the right kind of herbicides. So generally speaking, you have amines or esters. The esters are the ones that you should be looking to use at this time of the year. It'll say that on the label, so like 2,4-D, isooctyl ester, or also you can use the signal word. Generally speaking, the amines have a danger signal word, the esters have a caution signal word. That's due to the eye splash hazard, not differences in the inherent toxicity of them. But check the label, make sure that you're using something with an ester form of the herbicide. And if that's the case, you can usually get pretty good control with applications when you make those daytime temperatures in the 50s, nighttime temperatures above freezing. This plot here, I love to show this picture. I sprayed this area out on the 20th of November, the year that I did this. And this is the following spring. You see the dandelions are in bloom everywhere that I didn't spray. But the important thing is that this area held weed free until the following October because I got better translocation of the herbicide below ground to control all of those weeds that make those perennials a perennial. So not only can you get good control of winter annual seedlings at this time of year, but also if you've got dandelions, clovers, and other perennials, don't wait till next spring. If you have a client that is, fussy, if you want to put it that way, this is actually agronomically still a good time of year to attempt to do that control. Also, if you look out at the turf surfaces, all of the tropical warm season grasses are now purple. The savanna warm season grasses like Bermuda grass are starting to turn tan, but where you see the purpling grass, that's where you can map out and know that next year it wouldn't be a bad idea to plan on putting out a pre-emergence herbicide when the forsythia are starting to bloom. All right, Ed, that is what I have to share for today.
Thank you, Dr. Gardner. As always, death and destruction of weeds and information on that is always going to be useful. The man who nearly got eaten by cicadas and fall armyworms, Dr. Dave Shetler, follow up with that.
Okay, I'm just going to have kind of a review of what we saw this last year. Basically, the Japanese beetles were late in their emergence. I had people that were saying they were still seeing some Japanese beetle adults through August. And we've seen that for the last few years. They seem to have kind of shifted their populations, but In most areas of Ohio, they were AWOL. They didn't show up. And when they did show up, they were in very small numbers. Yet there were a few hot spots. We had some hot spots over sort of between Dayton and Cincinnati, and another couple of hot spots up around the Akron, Canton, Cleveland triangle. But in essence, their populations were way down. The mass chafers, where I've been getting hundreds per night in my light trap in that late June, early July window, I was only getting maybe 10 to 15 of them this year. And I'm not sure what happened, but my theory is that the saturated soils that we had in May was sufficient to probably drown the pupae of these beetles. And so what does that mean? Well, the simple task is, the simple meaning is that virtually all of your grub insecticides should have worked great this year. And the other thing that we found is that I've been studying the populations of these for over 30 years now. Typically, when we have these population crashes of Japanese beetle and mass chafers, it usually takes them about 2 years to build back up to damaging levels. And so again, I'm not telling you not to put out grub insecticides next year, but I am telling you that it's probably irrelevant about the time that you put your grub insecticide down. It should work pretty well next year also. We also saw a little bit of billbug damage early in the season, but most of it across Ohio was masked by the sufficient rainfall that we had in May and June. And so the turf typically grew through the damage for the billbugs. I did get a few reports of some billbug damage that was observed in late July and early August. But again, that's kind of what we've been seeing for the last few years. And we are seeing an increase of a second generation of the billbugs. So pay attention. We'll be talking about these at our OTF conference that will be coming up in December. And I think Ed may talk a bit more about that. The other thing that I think that was really outstanding to me, basically from its absence, were the crane flies. Last year, everybody was talking about all the crane flies flying around, and I only saw a couple of them this fall. So other than up in the Lake Erie counties where they've got the European crane flies, our native crane flies apparently took it on the chin with the weather conditions that we had this year. Same thing with the chinch bugs. The chinch bugs don't like wet conditions, especially early in the springtime. And where we've seen some really extensive damage of chinch bugs in the last couple of seasons, they were again very sparse in number and very little visible damage from them this year. Obviously, the pest of the season was the fall armyworm. And this is the one that took most of our attention away from all the rest of the critters. The armyworms were out there and denuding the turf grass, eating it down. We've talked about how to go ahead and water that turf, keep it growing, keep the crowns hydrated so that it can recover. I have had a few late reports just this week that, yes, there's still a few of the remaining second generation of the fall armyworms out there munching away, but this cool, wet weather is basically going to stop them. The grass is growing faster than they're eating it, and the cool temperatures is going to slow them down or even kill them. And those that have pupated probably won't make it through, especially if we get a frost event or a freeze event over the next couple of weeks. That's all I've got to talk about, Ed, and I'll turn it back over to you.
Thanks, Dave. Glad to know you weren't eaten up by all the insects this year. We did have concerns you were going to be overwhelmed, but like I said, I think you lived your best life in a long, successful career, having 2 massive pest outbreaks. You know, you do say fall armyworm took the biscuit, but you also made Jimmy Kimmel with those cicadas. So, you know, things to be taken into account there. Now, one thing to pick up on from Dr. Shetler's comments in regards to OTF, expect to see the conference preview coming out in the next couple of days. We got the likes of Tom Nicolai, Doug Richmond, Jim Kearns coming in from NC State. I got industry speakers such as Chris Williamson, Rob Golenbiowski coming in, Mark Jordan, the current GCSAA president. A lot of the activities that we would have been used to are back as we are in person. We also have the high school quiz bowl. And so looking forward to it. A couple other ones actually a little bit on the unique side. Hector's shop will be in town. Hector Velasquez is coming in for the EM track. And Power Distributors are also going to do a workshop up at the OTF farm for the equipment managers. And that will be on the Tuesday morning. So a lot of stuff getting packed in. And December 6th through the 9th, we open up on the Monday with a irrigation workshop with Brad Jakubowski coming in from Penn State. So a whole range of stuff kind of to look forward to this year, which we would strongly recommend getting involved in. And we look forward to seeing everybody back there. We'd probably look to have one more of these, talk a little bit about snow mold, probably more so than anything else in the next kind of 2 to 3 weeks, depending on where the weather goes. But once again, we'd like to say thank you for all the support this year. And if you've got any questions, do not be afraid to reach out to any of us with whatever topic. We'll find out the right person that you need to reach with it. Thanks again and talk to you soon, folks.